I am Nick Page, and I'm not going to talk to you about code. I'm not going to show you any code snippets or anything like that. I think we're the last session of the day, so today we're going to change a little bit and talk about UX strategy. I've been a UX person for about 25 years now. I've been working on it since before pretty much the internet was something that was publicly available. Makes me old. I'm going to start this with a question. In here, I guess most of you are developers, but you probably know UX. Does anyone have an answer to a question? What is UX? Does anybody know? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, so we know the words. Hooray! Can someone tell me what that means? What is it? What is user experience? Excellent. It's the experience a user has. And I was wondering if anybody has a cricket sound maker on their phone. That would be perfect for when I ask these questions. I know it's the last session of the day. Everybody's tired, but it's an important question to think about, not just for me. I'll get to a point of why exactly in a couple of things. Most people, when I ask that question about what's UX, they'll answer something along the design of functions. Sometimes it's UI design. Sometimes it's, depending on if you're app developer for mobile or a web developer or something like that, you'll start talking about the button placement or maybe flat design or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Whatever your answer, if you had one in your head that you didn't want to say, keep that in mind. And so the riddle here to me is, what is UX and what will it do for you? If anybody in here, think of yourself as a manager in a company. You've got a bunch of money. You have to spend it on your team. You've got to spend it on something this month, this year, whatever. How much are you going to spend on UX? How much are you going to spend on development? How much are you going to spend on getting better programmers? How much will you spend on getting different frameworks or training or something on whatever you need to spend on? And you have to remember that in about 6 months, maybe a year, your boss is going to call you and ask you to justify why you spent that money. And you're going to look at the board and you're going to say, wow, well, this was a success. That's why I spent the money. This wasn't very good. These are the lessons I learned. And this sucked. I'm not doing that again. But I'm going to have to explain why I made that choice to spend the money on the sucky thing. Okay, so what will UX do for you as a manager? How much will it cost? And the last thing is, what are the risks? People don't often think of risks when they're talking about UX. But obviously, like absolutely every choice we make in life, every discipline we pursue, there obviously are risks. The question is, would you invest in absolutely anything? Would you put your own money or would you put your boss's money in anything at all if you didn't know the answers to these questions? Okay? Typically, in the last few years, UX has gotten to a point where lots of CEOs, lots of middle and top managers know the letters. They could tell me that it was user experience, but they would have about the same answer as this room did when we dig deeper and what does that mean. They have no idea what it is. They have no idea what it can do for them, what they should expect from it, or any of this. And yet, they're willing to put money into it. This is one of the things that I try to solve with UX strategy, which is the basic theme of this talk today. And I also try to change the view of what UX and especially experience design is, which we will get to here. Oops, I keep hitting the wrong button. This is why it's important. This is a slide that I didn't work in very well because I just found it this morning in my email. But as I was looking for it, I couldn't find any information to prove this wrong. I haven't been able to find enough to prove it right. But anyway, it seems about right to me that bad UX, has cost $1.5 trillion. That's the national budget, probably, of Hungary or more. It's definitely more than from Prague, or the Czech national budget, than where I'm from. That is a fuck of a lot of money for bad design, something that's relatively easy to solve, relatively easy. We don't need to buy new technology. We don't need to buy new programmers. We just need to use what we've got better. roughly a third to bad design, I think, is a reasonable guess. Just looking at the stuff that I see out there, and assuming that that $5.5 trillion is a good baseline, then we've got a right figure. Okay, $1.5 trillion is nuts. Okay, that's a huge, huge number. That's more than even Apple has. Oh wow, we can't see this. Anyway, my clever presentation. What is experience? Okay, this here, laser doesn't work here, does it? No, anyway, all right. This here is a prototype, a template for mobile design. Anybody who's seen a wireframe on a mobile, you know what this picture is. Okay? What's experience? It's seeing crappy pictures and trying to hear from the description what it is. Do you think that experience, just answer this for yourselves, do you think that experience is found in the prototype? That's often what we hear that UX is, prototyping and testing and stuff like that. Is UX this guy? Is experience this? It looks like he's looking into a mobile, and he doesn't look too happy about it. Maybe those fonts, the fonts that you designers like these days, those super skinny, like 1-point fonts, one pixel thick fonts. I can't see them anymore. Maybe he can't find the button. Maybe he just does not understand the application. But he doesn't look too happy. At any rate, I don't even think that's experience. He's not experiencing much fun, I don't think, in that picture, but I don't think that's experience. What is experience? This, ladies and gentlemen, is experience. It does not have to do with the screen. Sometimes it does. Okay? Experience is life. It's what we feel. Experience is the sum of emotions we feel when interacting with something. In a business sense, okay, when we're talking about it in the business world, experience is the sum of emotions I feel when I'm interacting with a company. That could be through a screen. It could be through a blinking neon sign. It could be a billboard, it could be a call center, it could be the product itself. If your company makes cars, it's through driving your car. All of those things added together are my experience. It's also what my friends say about that product, that brand, in the bar or in the coffee shop. I worked for a company a few years ago in the Czech Republic that is one of the most hated consumer brands. One of our biggest problems was trying to figure out how to make people not be ashamed of admitting they use this brand when they talk to their friends. That was a horrible, horrible thing. Experience is also this lady. Is she experiencing something? Is she happy? This is an image I used for a presentation on employee experience. If this is a picture of your employees, pack it in. Close your doors, leave, take a vacation. You will save money before you fold, because that'll be the end of it. That was our employees at the bank. 25% of them were ashamed to admit to their friends where they worked. That is a horrible, horrible, horrible statistic. You can't get over that. It's too difficult. What's this? This is experience. She's experiencing something. This guy's holding a big, huge, fat frog. I don't know who the lady is, but she's on a talk show, and she's not liking that frog very much. And this is experience. It's zen. It's bliss. It's peace. Right? It's nice. It's comfortable. Has nothing to do with the screen. I don't even see an electronic thing in there. And this, kind of similar. This is a nice experience. I'll have a similar picture to this at the end of the presentation with one slight difference, and we'll see how much the experience changes with one little difference from this picture. Experience design, okay, is exactly this. It's design for emotion. When I think of experience, I'm not really caring about technology. I don't actually care at that time whether there will be an app or a website, much less what it's going to look like, or if it will be material design, or if it will be skeuomorphic or something different. I actually don't give a shit. I'm trying to think of the emotion that I want to elicit. An example, one of the new banks attacking the big four in the Czech Republic has this image of being young, spunky, snarky, kind of always kicking the big banks in the heels, being kind of funny, and he's very popular. The guy who did the commercials for the past 10 years is now sort of almost a little star in the country for that one role that he's just been making fun of the banks. And that's it. The rest of the banks tend to want to be serious, and they want to be very stable. They want to be very faithful, and you know, you can count on me. Completely different image. Same exact product. They don't offer anything different. They offer, you know, the same exact thing that banks have been offering for hundreds of years, but their image is completely different. The emotion they're trying to get is completely different. Experience design to me has nothing to do with the screen. The canvas, if you will, that I'm working on is the person, it's the user. I want to take any old person in the room, and after experiencing what I want them, my design, I want them to be so enthusiastic of what I'm offering, they are going to be happy. They're going to be recommending it to their friends. I don't mean just liking it on Facebook. I mean actually going to a pub the next day and saying, hey, John, check this shit out. You've got to see this. I've tried this yesterday. It's great. That's what I want people to do. And I want them to come back. Okay? I'm not making a sale. That's not what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on this stuff. I want the person to be so happy they did business with me that they're looking forward to doing it again. If that involves spending money, I want that person to be so happy they are looking forward to their next opportunity to give me their money. That's what I want. That's what I'm working on is the people. If I need an app to help me do that, then I'll make an app. If I don't need an app, then I'll say, screw it. I don't want an app. It's a waste of money, right? I might be working on the employees. The people that I'm working on may not be customers. And it's an important question. It's an interesting question to ask yourself. If I'm the CEO of a startup or a small company, what phase I'm in, it doesn't matter actually. And let's say God comes down and say, you get to choose one customer segment you're going to focus on. That's my law. You can choose employees, you can choose customers, you can choose users, you can choose investors, anyone you define, it doesn't matter, but you can only choose one. Who would you say, and this time if anyone wants to shout, I'll be happy to hear it, would you say is the most important group that you could choose? Anybody? We don't do a lot of business in this room, do we? The answer, I think, it depends a lot on your business. It's the answer that consultants love and customers hate is it depends. Excuse me. But if I'm a startup and I'm just beginning, my answer might be investors. I need to focus my attention on investors because if I don't get their money, I'm not going to be alive in another month. And there never will be a customer or an employee. If I have got my investor, I'm in my early phase of rolling out, it's probably my customers and users. I want to convert users and turn them into customers. They're probably my most important. And if I'm a mature company that already has 10 million customers, but they're beginning to abandon me because their experience sucks, it might be my employees that I need to focus on so that they can give the customers a good experience, okay? So when you're talking about experience, one reason I don't talk about customer experience, I don't actually like the term CX that some people may have heard in this room, is because it tends to focus your thoughts just on one side. I use some of the same methods, some of the same ideas, but I don't care who I'm talking to. I might be worrying about the employees, and I've just done a project where we started with classic customer experience kind of thinking, and after talking to the CEO and to the leaders of the company, they actually decided to shift their entire focus for the first phase of our work together on employee experience. And then the second phase will probably be on supplier experience. We're probably not going to do customer experience until the last thing, until we get these two sorted out. It could be partners, could be anybody. Could be client, could absolutely be anybody that's important to you. Experience design isn't about the product. There's product design for that, okay? It's not about the sale. If I'm looking at the sale, I will probably fail in designing a good design, a good experience. One of the main reasons for that is how many people in here have, I don't know, let's say in the last year, chosen an important purchase. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's a camera, or something that is important to you. Something where you have gone through and looked at a bunch of different options, maybe looked at a bunch of different websites, read reviews, and really think about it. Take some time. You find something, and there's one, let's say product A has a feature that you really want. I don't know, Wi-Fi on it, whatever. Product B is in general much closer to what you want. All the other stuff, you like it better in general, but it does not have that one little doodad, the Wi-Fi. So you have to decide. Okay, well, none of the products are absolutely perfect. I have to give up something no matter what I choose, right? Maybe I have 3 choices that are in the short list, and none of them are perfect. Finally, I do choose. I'm excited. Hooray. I go down, I slap down my credit card, I get the box, I get it in my hand, and it does not have Wi-Fi, and maybe I really wanted that shit. And look, a week later, it's $10 cheaper online. God damn it, I bought it too soon. This is called buyer's remorse. It happens almost every time someone makes an important decision. It's very hard to avoid. And as long as a company is interested in the sale, they're going to fuck up the buyer's remorse phase. If you do it right, you can not only avoid that, you can encourage that to build a strong bond with the person, and it's going to make them much more likely to buy from you. Maybe they'll buy the Wi-Fi widget from you for an extra $100, which is nice. Not necessarily important for the relationship, but maybe you'll make an extra sale. But they're probably going to have a much happier experience with you and return to you when they make a similar choice again, or when they have the opportunity to recommend you or diss you to someone. They'll probably be positive if you handle that right. Handling the post-sale experience, I think, is more important than the pre-sale experience. It's what makes or breaks a lot of the relationships. And that's exactly it. Experience design is not about any of the common things. It's not about the sale, not about the product, not about all those things. It is about this. It's about the relationship. It's building, when you have a relationship like this, there are some amazing things that happen. One of them is that customers are not cost sensitive. They are willing to knowingly pay more than the product is worth. Okay, if you doubt me, look at iPhones. They cost about $50 or $60 to make. People spend $1,000 for the things, right? It's not worth it, but people love it. Almost everything else. Clothing stores, every fashion store sells stuff that costs almost nothing to make, but they sell it at a high premium, and people are proud to wear it. They're proud to wear an advertisement on their ass that they spent too much money on those jeans, and everybody says, I want to do that too. That's about the relationship. It makes you feel good. The strategy comes in. How to achieve all this is you can't do it by just doing one thing at a time. Typically, projects begin with a manager or someone saying, hey, we need to design an app that does something, right? And so we start working on that. We start designing specs. Maybe we do some consumer testing. Maybe we do some user testing. Maybe we do some UX on that product. And then we have an app, and it has an experience. How does that fit into the ecosystem of experience for my company? I have no idea because I never really thought about it, right? It's just an app. Well, we might fix the app or maybe add another app or do another app. And at the end of the year, we might have 10 apps, but they're all different, or maybe they're all the same, but we just sort of evolved. We just sort of happened accidentally, okay? Strategic thinking about this is sitting down and deciding a goal for our experience. A business would not invest in a new factory without a strategy of what it's supposed to do, how to achieve it, who should lead various efforts to make that happen, and what we're going to do with the stuff the factory produces, right? They wouldn't do this. And this is exactly the same thing with UX. We set an emotional goal. We look at the emotions. What is it we want our customers to feel? How do they want us? If our customers were to use 3 or 4 words to describe us, what is the word cloud we would want as the result? That's a good target specifically for an experience design. We're never going to hit the mark exactly. Emotion is a vague thing. We're never going to get exactly right with everybody, maybe not with anybody, but if we get close to right with most, we're doing pretty good. We set that target with testing. Usually I do a lot of user testing, and I do a lot of qualitative testing, not quantitative testing. I will sit down and get my core basic information with as little as 10 people on a particular issue. And I'll talk to them in depth. Or I might do prototyping. We did, again with the bank, we had a project before Apple Watches came out. We wanted to test to see if a bracelet as a payment method would be a good idea. And my first reaction to that was how idiotic. I already have cards, I have mobile stuff. What the hell do I need a bracelet for? As we did our testing, we looked at some extreme situations and discovered, going to the airport, looking at a parent with 3 suitcases, 10 kids, they want a bracelet to buy the kid a candy. They don't want to go digging in their pockets. As we saw this, we started thinking about more stuff. In the winter, everybody's covered, coats, gloves. You know, you don't want to have to go digging for your wallet all the time. A bracelet is nice and handy. It's right there. And the opposite extreme there is someone going jogging, doing their exercise outside. They might not want to carry their cards, phone, whatever else with them, and a bracelet would be a handy thing. So as we did some testing, I convinced myself that I was wrong. Happens once a year, I allow it. So we saw that there actually are some cases where it would have made sense. Then the Apple Watch came out, and we decided not to go into the manufacturing, and we dropped the whole project. But the testing of that was actually pretty interesting. And seeing the prototypes, the first prototypes we made were just plastic things where we pretended to pay, just to see if it was, you know, when it was in our team, to see if it was a really stupid thing or not. And just that, it was very, very funny to see how quickly we, the testing team, who were the design team, the first round of it, there was 5 people, after wearing the bracelet for a week and just pretending to pay, it actually became a habit, even though I knew that it's just a piece of plastic that I tied on my wrist. That habit was very quick to form. It was funny. And so we were trying to find the core drives and motivations. And in this case, it's pure convenience. It's just laziness. You know, the mother of all invention is laziness. I don't want to get off my fat ass to turn the TV, so I'm gonna so I'll get a remote to do it for me, right? Or have a teenager. But anyway, finding out the emotional drives will help you solve the design problems. And it's much better than starting with, I want an app that does something. It's, let's observe people, see what they're already doing right now, and how can my company fit into, and our offerings fit into their lives in a way that will be mutually beneficial. That's a much better thing. You ever see a park where there's all these paved paths, and between the paved paths there's all the walked paths that people really use, right? That's sort of the difference. If the designer of the park had just laid a green, let the grass grow, let the people walk, and then a year later pave the paths that people walk, he'd look like a genius. That's UX design. That's what I'm talking about. Let the people do the work for you. You look smart. And then you plan, the strategy plans the creative steps to make this happen. Right? You can do lots of things. At the very end of this, if I still have time, I'm probably talking too much as it is. If we have time, I'll have a few tools that I use to do all this, if anybody's interested. What steps they are, what roles I need to do these things. Obviously, I need milestones to measure my success. Am I getting close to my goals? And I need to have finances tracked to make sure that I'm on track. I'm not wasting money. That's what I just said. And the last part is I need to share this. The finished strategy should basically be a statement that's 1 or 2 sentences that everybody on the team who is involved in implementing the strategy should know and believe in. That's very important. It's not just something that management says, here, you got to do this. People have to believe it to make a strategy work. Otherwise, you might as well not bother. And so there's a lot of ways you can use to do that. Mostly having the core people involved in developing the strategy is the best way. But other than that, there's all kinds of propaganda and marketing you can use to boost that. The rest of the strategy should fit on one piece of paper, maybe two if you really need to. A strategy is not a detailed document, but it gives you the map and tells you what details will need to be filled in beneath it to implement it. But the strategy itself should be something that everybody on the team knows, understands, can describe, can talk about for 5 minutes in their own words, and they should be able to touch on every vital point in that strategy and what role I play in implementing it. These are a lot of what I'm talking to, well, a lot of what I've been talking about, I'm sorry, my tongue is getting tied. Especially when there's a room full of developers, a lot of people think that it just sounds like marketing bullshit, that it doesn't matter. The important part is the code, it makes the thing run. Without that, there would be nothing to sell, which is absolutely true. If it's designed wrong, the best code won't sell. So it's definitely a symbiotic relationship here. And with marketing, a lot of what I do is overlapping. We do a lot of the same tools with a different focus. Marketing tends to be one-way communication from the company out. For me, I want it to be a relationship. I want it to be a two-way thing. I want people to interact with me, and I'll interact back with them. And the product sits there somehow. But a lot of this comes from marketing talk. And so these are things that are actually from company business publications talking about a couple of big major brands. When you do your branding for anything, you should have a branding statement and a branding mission. What role do you want to fulfill as a brand? And Coca-Cola's here is to, this is their actual selling proposition, live the Coke side of life. It's related to the joy and happiness, and customers associate this brand with these emotions. The thing that Coke spent probably $1 million on those 6 words, and they have nothing to do with drink. Coke does not sell drinks. Kind of interesting, isn't it? They sell exactly that. They sell youth, they sell parties, they sell sex, they sell fun, they sell immortality in their own way. And now they have started selling remembering when I was young. They have retro commercials, how much we're part of life, and we were part of my grandmama's life at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they were part of my child's birth, and now she's getting married, and blah, 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 right? The actual statistic for how many Coke advertisements in a given year have to do primarily with drinking something changes year to year, but it's always between 10 and 20%. 80% of Coke's advertising and marketing efforts have nothing or very little to do with drinking stuff, right? They're selling emotions. And they're wildly, wildly successful doing it, right? Their design team that came up with the product inside, how important is that, right? Nike. Presumably, they sell shoes and other sporting equipment. Their mission statement is, where do I have it here? To bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. I don't see shoes at all. I don't see a ball or sporting equipment. It's closer, inspiration and innovation, that's closer. And then their other thing here is if you have a body, you're an athlete, which that's a little bit iffy, but again, they're going after the emotion of what they're trying to sell. Another very, very, very crowded field. There's lots of people selling sneakers and other sporting stuff, and Nike is going at it on a purely emotional level, and they're number one. And again, they spend millions of dollars. Companies of this size probably do spend at least $1 million for those statements. They're very hard to write properly, so that if you just come up with a cool sounding thing, then it is marketing bullshit. To come up with something that the people feel is accurate and people in the company believe in, and they can successfully sell that to everyone else, is a very, very difficult thing to do. And the statements have to be short so that people can repeat them, so that they can feel it's part of my personal mantra, right? It's no accident that they're both only a couple of words long. Um, and we could go through, you look at some of the mission statements to the biggest companies in the world, IBM and all of this, they're all the same thing. They're going on an emotional level. How I do this, does anybody have questions at this point? Or should I cut this short? I have about 5 more slides with how I do this. Anybody want to throw things? We're all tired, sleepy.
Wake up!
Okay, this is something, I'm a big fan of canvases. One thing to keep us from getting into irrelevant detail, or detail that is irrelevant at this time. Okay, the detail is always important, but not always right now. Canvases are great because they have limited space, and they focus your attention on what you need to do. I don't know if any one of you have seen a lean business canvas, but that's, I think, the first canvas that got popular, at least. I made this up, I borrowed parts of it, stole some other parts of it, and whatever, and I modify this as I want per project. I don't have an actual template for a project. If anybody wants this, I have a link. You can steal this from me and do whatever you want with it liberally. but it's a great thing for these canvases, because some of these fields, you'll sit down and in 2 minutes you'll fill out maybe half of this. And you'll fill it out with stuff that's actually good and useful. The other half that takes a little bit of work, it'll suddenly stick out at you. It's like, oh, this thing, I need to do some work, and that's going to take me, and I can put down the things I need to do to fill this in. And it gets you started on the hard stuff really quick. Sometimes, maybe even often, that's the only document we really need to control our work, to control the filling out, the completion of our task. There's a different, various canvases we can use. I don't know, does anyone here know the Kano model? It's a thing Japanese guy invented, I think in the 80s, late 80s. How to measure why certain things work, why certain things work in the long term and things like that. Basically, it's a measure of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. The dissatis on the bottom and delight, high satisfaction on top, not implemented and implemented on the other axis. And it looks simple, but he did a lot of research to actually back this up. But it's one of the things that helps you realize where it's important to invest with your limited money. When you're fixing problems, you're getting rid of pain points in your product. You have to realize that by getting rid of a pain point, even if you do it well, it's going to have a very limited impact on your on the experience, right? If I have something that's on my mobile phone that pisses me off every time I have to open it, I go through that step. It irritates me every time. Finally, they release it, and that's gone. I'm like, yoo-hoo, cool, I don't have to do it. And then by 2 days later, I've forgotten all about it, and I'm back at baseline. That's this curve, right? It very quickly levels out. It's, however, important to do. Otherwise, you get lots of these curves, and you're going to have lots of pain points, and no one's ever going to get anywhere else. So it's kind of like technical debt. You have to just clean it up. This is emotional debt. Think of it that way. With the delight curves, those last a little longer. It's a similar curve. It's backwards, obviously, but you have something that's so cool, I tell everybody about it, and pretty soon I get used to it. If I've done that right, this will level out, and it'll still be a positive point, but it will eventually sink down to this baseline, and it's going to be an expected point, right? Everybody, when we first saw the iPhone, it was like, yoo-hoo, that was cool. And now it's pretty much, you can't think of anybody coming up with a phone that's not that. It's expected. So if you want a product that's going to live by the delights, you need to keep planning new delights. You can't expect that this one is going to last very long. Okay, and this is an actually interesting model, and it helps to figure out where I'm going to focus my attention when. Empathy maps just help me focus on the emotions that I'm talking about and to write them down and just to think about them in a more organized way. They look silly because they have to be. Emotions are impossible to quantify, and anything that tries to look too much like a spreadsheet will miss the mark. This is just a helpful tool to help me focus on various, to name and focus specific emotions that I'm working with. NPS is something I could give a whole presentation on. It's the granddaddy of emotional metrics. It's a really useful and very good tool, and probably 80–90% of the time I see it, it's done completely wrong. Most people miss the complete purpose. Even companies that professionally deal with NPS gathering, some of the little tools that you can build in, widgets that you can build into your apps and stuff, most of those companies miss the whole point. NPS, it asks the question, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend? Okay, whatever the product is, or recommend us, or some version of that question. How likely do you feel to recommend something? Right? So it's self-reporting. Terrible question. You should never ask self-reporting questions because people are horrible predictors of their future behavior. And yet this is the best question there is for that. The people, all the red ones, 0 through 6, are detractors. If someone says that I'm all the way up to 6, it means that's a negative answer. 7 and 8 are neutral, and 9 and 10 are positive. The 9 and 10 people are what we're trying to do. This is very heavily weighted to the negative on purpose. And the funny thing is that we're not actually looking to see if people will recommend. We don't care about that. The way NPS evolved was that in the US, the mail order businesses were huge for about 100 years. There's still the same advertisements for seeds and for various make yourself a muscle man kind of products existed when my father was a little boy, and the magazines that he has from when he was 10, when I was 10, the exact same advertisements were in the same magazines, and they were still selling them. The mail order business was huge. And so some of the more organized mail order businesses tried to send out questionnaires to see what was working, what wasn't working. They were doing their own version of analytics, but it was very disorganized and very organic. So a professional marketing company got in and they wanted to find out what questions actually predicted future purchases. And they found out that there was no statistical correlation with almost any question that anyone asked with, regardless of the answers. There was very little or no correlation to actual future purposes except for this question. And this question did not correlate to actual recommendations, but it did correlate to the person's future buying behavior, which is what this question is about. We don't give a shit if you're going to recommend with this question, and that's what everyone misses. Yeah? They wouldn't be, because in this, 60% is negative. How are you going to get 60% negative out of 3 answers? It's because of the way the answers correlated. When you answer this question, if you were in the top 90% or 80% of answers, then you are actually likely to buy from that company again, right? If you're in the bottom 60%, then you are almost very unlikely to buy again, and this was the middle, right? So you need to have a scale that allows for the 60% negative. It's also an emotional thing. People tend to have a hard time. It raises their stress levels. When you get into the user testing, you put electrodes on people and measure their sweat responses and things like that. If you give them 3 choices, they get so stressed, they take the middle one about 90% of the time. If I did any question at all, I give you a 3 or 5 choice answer and pass it out in this room, you'd probably get 70% choosing the middle one. I don't care what the question is, I already know the answer. Right? If you give them this, they feel looser. They don't feel as tight about it. Theoretically, I could make this a 5-point question, and I'd be close enough, but it's still too small. People feel the stress out of it. And then you expend it to 20 answers, and they're lost. So 10 is the one that works. You can try them, though. There's people who do 5-point scales, 7-point scales, and stuff like that. 10 is the one that tends to work, and it's the one that the official NPS sites recommend. Anybody else? My computer's crapping out. There's only one slide left, and it doesn't really matter. And this is just a customer retention thing, because that's the NPS is predicting my own behavior, which, even though this is sort of a sneaky way of trying to get the person to predict his behavior, it's still very loose. It's still not a strong correlation. So if we compare that to actual retention, if NPS and retention go up, then we're on a very good solid footing for showing that we're doing well. Retention is a past behavior thing, and it's actual spending. One of the things that companies often want from me is to test a product or to create a design that will guarantee them business, and I can't do that. The only thing I can do is reduce some risks. I can do some insurance. I think I can increase the odds that it's going to hit the mark, but the only way to test your business is to see if people will actually spend money on it, and that means you have to do your business. And so the retention is a very good thing, because that's people who have done business and who've done business with you again. By increasing retention, it's not only good business strategy, but it proves the points. And that's my last slide. Any thoughts, questions besides? Cricket machine? Who's got that? I should have brought one. Okay, yeah. How difficult is it to start? I guess that really has to do with what the product is. The main thing I would always recommend is to do some kind of ethnographic, some kind of beginning study to see if your business is wanted. Lots of businesses have developed, done everything right except that one step. They've produced and launched and just fallen flat because they just didn't hit a market that people responded to. And they might have even been close. Maybe it was a good idea, just packaged a little wrong. So you have to figure out, at the very least, have somebody help you figure out, do the study to see if you're going into an area that people actually want. The only exception, I don't even know if that would be an exception, but if you're copying a business model flat out, like if you're doing Uber locally, or something that you know works in the world, and you want, I know it's not allowed here, but just that's an example because everyone knows what Uber is, I think. But, and even that, I would say to do a little bit of testing to make sure that idea works here, because there might be a reason why no one else is doing it yet. Even though it works in England and America and Germany, it might not work here. So that's the very minimum. The rest of this, I think you should do all UX. Can be done for as little, I think, as 10% of your general budget, right? So whatever you're spending, and a startup does waste a lot of effort, tighten it up somewhere and plan 10% and do that, because it's cheap insurance, just to make sure that you're increasing your odds and reducing the cost of failure too is another thing. Because even if your company fails, there's probably stuff that was good in there that you can pick up, repackage, and take into another startup, right? Because that's the thing, most startups fail. That's a fact of life. Most new companies do fail. Doesn't matter how much funding you have, doesn't matter who your backers are, most startups fail. If they didn't, everybody with money would be doing millions of them, and they'd be much, much richer than they are. And the main thing is to figure out why it failed, what you can learn, what you can do better next time, and after 3 or 4 or 5 version failures, you can actually launch something that's great, right? So. And I'm thinking of startups even as new programs in a big company. So any big company that's trying to keep up with the new business and stuff, they're going to fail most of the time. Maybe even more than startup people, because they're used to a different model. So the testing, I think, is vital. In a mature company, I think you should probably spend 1/3 of your development budget at least on the design. And maybe more, it depends on the business. Think of IKEA without design. I mean, Swedish design without design. It would be Swedish sticks. Did that answer, or anyone else? Okay then, well, the computer's telling us to go home.